The Streets, Traffic, and Refuge Committee will be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Coatar.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Chairman Boyd.
Present.
President Reed. 6 present. You have a quorum.
Okay, the first board bill we're going to hear this morning is Board Bill 252, sponsored by myself. We need to get the street commissioner out of here. So,
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized on Board Bill 252.
thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 252 is our public works bill in which the city collects utility taxes, and those utility taxes then get to be split up amongst 28 wards to do capital improvements. And I have the Street Commissioner, Kent Flake, here to give more detailed information for the committee.
All right, Mr. Flake. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. This year's St. Louis Works Board Bill, as it's commonly referred to, is $5.3 million. That's based on gross utility tax receipts. As you'll notice, that's actually down $100,000 from previous years, at least from last year. That money is typically used for asphalt paving and part of the 50/50 sidewalk program. It's divvied up between the 28 aldermen, and it's $96,000, what that breaks out to per alderman. In the past, with the extra $100,000, it was $100,000 per ward. This year, it'll just be $96,000. It's based, the utility tax receipt revenues have been averaging out since 2014 to be about $5.25 million. The last 3 years it was at 5.5, or in the last year it was at 5.4. This year it's at 5.3. I actually anticipate that going down probably another 100 or 200,000 in the next couple of years. Essentially, we're just spending a little bit more money than what we're actually bringing in, and we can do that though based on our previous balances going back to 2008 to 2013. In general, like I said, most of you guys have in the past have used that essentially for paving material cost and 50/50 sidewalk program. If you turn to the budget, you see that allocation is in 514, line item 5252, and 510, 5652. That comes out to be that material cost that ends up, or that fund that ends up going to you guys, the Board of Aldermen, for capital, or for St. Louis Works improvements.
Sorry, will you elaborate on that? So looking at this 5252, which is materials, it's 1.5 million.
Yes.
Could you just explain that again? I don't know if I wasn't following.
No, what that is it goes in the material account so it can be used for asphalt paving.
Okay.
So it's already set up there, and we don't have to do transfers or anything else later in order to get it from fund to fund. And also 510, 5652. That is where the sidewalk money comes out of for sidewalk repairs. And those are placeholders at this point. Once we have our St. Louis Works / capital meetings, and let's say 1.5 as they go to sidewalks, then we would adjust that and do a transfer for one lump sum.
Okay. All right. Any questions from members of the committee? Alderwoman Murphy.
You said that tax revenues are going down. Is there a reason, or do we know why?
Not necessarily going to say they're going down. We've just been overspending them. 2014, the revenue was $5.48 million. 2015 is $5.275 million. 2016 was $5.034 million. 2017 was $5.214 million. What a lot of that's based on, since it's utility tax gross receipts, it depends on the winter, and heating bills, because I mean it's probably most everybody's largest utility, and fluctuates more than anything. In general, they're pretty consistent, but if you have a warm winter, that number's going to go down a little bit. If you have a cold winter, hopefully that number goes up. Not sure if that's hopefully or not, but.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Boyd.
No question.
Alderman Bosley.
Just kind of thinking about it, I do have, that's a forward-thinking question. It is 2018, and at some point in time, hopefully as a city, we start looking at ways we can kind of jump more into technology and into the future. At some point in time, hopefully, we'll be getting more solar off the ground, and if that happens, of course, utilities go down. So in the event that that does happen, are we looking at ways long-term as far as still having money available to do the same things that we're doing now with St. Louis Works Funds?
No, not so far. We have not. It is something we need to probably start thinking about and start looking at, though.
Yes, sir. Well, that was a question I wanted to ask, though. Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
No questions. All right, Alderman Boyd, want to wrap us up?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I ask that Board Bill 52 come out. I move that Board Bill 52 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It's been moved by Chairman. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved in second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Coatar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
6 I vote to do pass.
Okay, next Board Bill up is Board Bill, Board Bill 253, sponsored by Alderman Roddy.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, this is, we've done a few of these in the 17th Ward now, and this is the most recent one. Good news, bad news is, the good news is as I guess it was kind of the, what was it, St. Louis and Yogi Berra used to say, place is crowded, nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Well, that's what's happening in the 17th Ward. We've had the reemergence of a number of these commercial districts, and as a result of that, we've had a great deal of increase in people parking within various neighborhoods, and it's creating a real hardship for the residents around that. This is the latest district that we're creating, and this is on Talmage, which is near the eastern end of the Grove Business District. So that is the intent of this board bill, and we've been fortunate that Park Central has been the entity that manages this for us, so, or for the residents out there.
Okay, let's take questions from members of the committee. Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Coulter.
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions.
Alderman Bosley.
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Sure. Alderman Roddy, for educational purposes for the members that are new on the committee, would you kind of explain what's going on over on, I guess, Talmage, and how Park Central actually will be administering the
Sure,
program?
Mr. Chairman, be glad to or happy to. The so this is a residential street that is right off of the eastern edge of the Grove. Historically, we've done several of these things now along the Grove in the Central West End, and then in the northern portion of the Grove neighborhood, which we refer to as Forest Park Southeast, which is close to the WashU Medical Center, is Cortex. On a daily basis, between Cortex and WashU, there's about 40,000 people that converge on that every day. And so we have obviously a shortage of parking and people wanting to park for free or not paying to park in the garage and so forth. So that's kind of creating some of the pressure during the daytime. And then in the evening, it's typically the entertainment district. This particular one is for the entertainment district. And to do this, typically, they create a geographic area, require 50% of the signatures within that area, 50% of the, I think it's registered voters sign a petition, and then that kind of gets it to the point where we introduce the legislation. At the time we introduced the legislation, it requires typically an annual fee. Park Central, which is our local redevelopment entity, they collect the fee and then administer the parking passes. And each year, residents have to come in and demonstrate proof of residency, and then they're issued a permit.
So in hearing that in more detail, are there any committee members that are new that have a follow-up question? I do. Alderwoman Boyd.
Alderman Roddy, my question is this only for commercial districts that can utilize this residential parking district on the blocks?
No, you can actually do it in residential areas. So we do it around the Warshu Medical Center, around Cortex. We have all these thousands of people. So we have some purely residential streets that are over there that have done this. The big challenge, though, is having some sort of central entity that administers it, so that so that each year the notices will go out, and so forth. Otherwise, the real challenge is, I think some other parts of town have tried to do this, and the challenge has been not having, you may have somebody do it on a voluntary basis or something like that, and then the resident moves out, or their life situation changes, and voluntary type of stuff is difficult to keep going for a longer period of time. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Out of curiosity, Alderman Roddy, since this is a parking-related issue, why wouldn't we utilize the parking division to administer this rather than have another entity? And the reason I bring it up is I know I get approached by residents around churches, especially large churches. They would like to have it, but the challenge is no one wants to administer it. No one wants to be that person to deal with the bureaucracy of it.
And that's kind of the part of the problem. When we're a large city, and it's very hard to kind of customize the level of services. I know that around Clayton, so Clayton has about 25,000 employees, 25 to 30,000. The city of Clayton will actually administer this around downtown Clayton, in the residential areas near downtown Clayton, so that, north of the downtown Clayton, it's Linton and some of those streets over there in what they call Old Town Clayton. They actually administer that, the city does. We began setting these things up, I don't know, probably 10, 12, 15 years ago. And, at that time, I think, I can't remember all the discussions that went on, but it was with Treasurer Williams, and I don't think they really viewed it as a profitable opportunity for them. So we kind of took it upon ourselves to figure out how to do that.
Okay. I think it'd be a great opportunity to have those conversations again, so that we can centralize how we do this, because it is a challenge in areas like mine, for example, where people don't really want to take that ownership. And there are certain neighborhoods that, like Forestbrook Southeast, where you have a viable neighborhood organization that doesn't mind. So I certainly want to elevate that conversation.
We would certainly welcome it. I mean, I think the staff out there would gladly be able to gladly hand this off to someone else. So.
Okay. Well, I'll move that Board Bill 253 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Second. It's been moved in second.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 253 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee.
Next board bill is Board Bill 242, volume 244.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 244, which is in front of you, is a bill for an honorary street name in the 7th Ward. I'm going to go ahead and start by handing around what are very nicely organized by the German-American Historical Society, the signatures of the registered voters on that block consenting to this honorary street name. We don't do a lot of these in the 7th Ward, but we are for this one. So this would rename one block stretch, honorarily name a one block stretch of 7th Street between Barton and Lami, which is actually a very busy street. It's what many people think is Broadway. It's actually 7th Street coming through Soulard. And there's not many residents on the block. It's not a long block, and there's only residents on one side of the street. The other side's commercial. And it would name it, honorarily rename it Bismarck Street. And we've got, I believe, Jim Merkel here and Jim Martin, both here. Okay. Jim Merkel here, who, if you don't mind, if the members of the committee would indulge him for a couple minutes to explain sort of how we got to this point, the history of some of the German-named streets in Soulard, and how they went away after World War II. I would add that Mr. Merkel presented this proposal to the Soulard Restoration Group, the Neighborhood Association for Soulard, many, many months ago, and they said basically, jump through the hoops, get the signatures, and we're good with it. So they're on board with this as well. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Merkel for a couple minutes.
Thanks an awful lot for your time. We've been working an awful hard for this. I am going to be passing out some. This is first sheet is a map from the 1880s. The blue is Bismarck Street, and which no longer exists, and the other one, the red, is where Lami is. I've also, that has some of the other streets there. Now, as just some background, as an American whose heritage is largely German, I've thought a lot about what it must have been to be German-American in World War I. My grandfather was entirely German, but answered the call to fight in the Great War. His father, my great-granddad, was born just a few years after his parents came from Germany. He must have thought of himself as all-American, but he also probably grew up in a home where his parents spoke proudly about the old country. Now imagine seeing this German-American after he saw his son go off to war, being made to prove his patriotism by denying his heritage. Imagine him watching as churches dropped German services, schools stopped teaching German, and a mob lynched a German alien in Collinsville. Imagine him watching as this city, built so much by German immigrants, renamed German-sounding streets because they were, quote, enemy streets. Now that's scary. There's nothing wrong with changing a street name, but if the purpose is to shame a group of patriotic Americans for their heritage, then plenty is wrong. There was even a procedure to follow. City leaders, including Aldermanic Streets, the Sewers and Wharves Committee Chairman, William Tam, that was your predecessor 100 years ago, Chairman Boyd, said it was up to residents living around the street to start the procedure, like we do today with the 60%. Then his committee and the full Board of Aldermen passed a bill changing the name. The committee approved this meanness 6 times. Maybe they voted out the bill on Bismarck Street in this very room. 6 times the Board of Aldermen passed streets change bills. 6 times German-American Mayor Henry Kiel signed those bills. You have a rare opportunity today by voting out Bill 244 in this room. You are telling William Tam, Henry Kiel, and everyone else who approved those vindictive measures they were wrong. Symbolically, you're saying no to all of the meanness so-called patriotic Americans imposed on German Americans during World War I, including my great-grandfather. Thank you for your time and your willingness to consider this matter.
Okay. Well, let's see if any members of the committee have questions or comments. Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions. It's just fine with me.
Alderwoman
I'm
Boyd.
German too.
Alderman Bosley.
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Okay. You want to go ahead and close?
Certainly, I'll just close by moving that, can I make a motion? Mr. Chairman? Okay. I move that the committee pass Board Bill 244 with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved in second.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 244 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, next board bill is Board Bill 251, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard.
Good morning, Chairman Boyd and esteemed colleagues. You have before you Board Bill 251, establishing a two-way stop sign at the intersection of Alfred and Bingham. This was brought to my attention through one of my constituents. She's gathered signatures of those two blocks and submitted them to me. I'm sorry I don't have them with me this morning, but I assure you that there was sufficient signatures gathered for this and that I would entertain any questions the committee might have.
Okay, seems like a simple bill. Alderwoman Murphy?
No questions, and we did see the signatures at the committee meeting, so I understand. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Coatar?
No questions.
Alderwoman Boyd?
This is in your ward.
Yes, ma'am. Of course. No, it's in your ward.
Alderman Bosley? No questions. Alderwoman Middlebrook?
No questions.
Okay. I move Board Bill 251 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved in second.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 251 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you very much, Chairman Boyd.
Yeah, next up is Resolution 188.
Mr. Boyd, you're recognized on Resolution 188.
Committee, this is a continuation of January the 16th meeting where I presented Resolution 188. Resolution 188 basically gives us the authority to communicate with the treasurer acting in her capacity as the parking supervisor to talk more about the parking commission, the role and responsibilities of the parking commission, finances of the parking commission, and any other questions as it relates to the parking commission. The parking commission, again, has not had a meeting since June 8th of 2017, notwithstanding a lawsuit that's current, which has nothing to do with the parking commission having monthly meetings. And it's within the purview of this committee to provide some oversight over streets, refuse, and traffic. So the parking commission, parking division comes on this committee's purview. And with that, I would like to continue the conversation with our parking supervisor, Ms. Tashara Jones, also our treasurer. So if she would come forward.
All right. Treasurer Jones, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you, Treasurer Jones.
Good morning.
Okay. Treasurer Jones, you want to introduce the gentleman that's standing next to you?
The gentleman next to me is my attorney, Matthew Hans, from Posanelli.
Okay. Matthew Hans, I just wanted to clarify, this is not a judicial proceeding. This is a legislative body, and you may be asked questions. If you want to stand with the treasurer, you may be asked questions.
Will I be asked questions by you?
Yes.
All right. Under the Missouri Rules of Ethics, you are a represented party in a litigation to which I am also an attorney. I'm not allowed to address issues relating to the litigation, or I should generally avoid communications with you just to ensure that I'm complying with the Missouri Rule of Ethics.
Then
So
I
will
will
not
ask
be
you.
answering
Then I will
questions.
ask you to have a seat, sir. I will ask you to have a seat.
I would ask that Matthew stay. He is my attorney, and as everyone is aware, you are a litigant in an active lawsuit against my office. Therefore, my attorney has to be present to make sure that we don't delve into the issues related to the lawsuit.
We will not be having conversation as it relates to the lawsuit at all. So there's actually no need to even have an attorney present. We as a legislative body have the authority to hold hearings with any staff member or elected official of the city of St. Louis.
In any other case, yes, that would be the case, but you are a litigant in an active lawsuit against my office. Therefore, I have the right to be represented by legal counsel.
Okay. You know, for the sake of moving this process along, I'll allow Mr. Hans to stand. Let me clarify and let the public know why there was a subpoena, because you're here based on a subpoena. I have tried to communicate with you for many, many months with oftentimes resistance. I have asked for documents that is public information up to 5 times under the Sunshine Law with resistance. I've asked you to come to a committee hearing and got a very hostile communication back to me about you didn't have enough time. And so for the sake of time, you know, having you here under subpoena was the only option that I've had at my disposal to ensure that we have communications. So that's why the subpoena was issued. So let me talk about, ask you questions related to Board Bill number 39. So Board Bill 39 was the budget bill, correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and in that budget bill, it talked about travel being approved by the Parking Commission prior to any travel. Have there been any travel since July 1st?
Yes, there has been travel since July 1st.
And has it been approved by the Parking Commission?
No, it has not, because it didn't need to be approved by the Parking Commission.
But is an ordinance in place, which is the law of the city of St. Louis, that set that in motion? Would you agree?
The ordinance is there, but the travel that I have completed did not require approval because no city funds were expended.
Okay, so you have had no travel using, there's nothing to be reimbursed
No,
for travel? Okay,
no.
all right. And also, was it Board Bill 92 required monthly meetings of the Parking Commission, correct?
Right, but again, you are a litigant in an active lawsuit against the, you're saying that the whole Parking Commission is unconstitutional.
Well-
But you also want to be a participant in that process, which is a conflict of interest, because you are also seeking remedy as reimbursement of your legal fees as a result of the lawsuit. So it's a conflict of interest.
Okay, so are
And
you-
I've been advised by my attorneys
Okay.
not to have meetings until this has been resolved.
So you've been advised by your attorney to willfully and knowingly violate the law. Is that
I'm not
correct?
going to interpret the law with you today. I've been advised by my attorneys to wait to have any more Parking Commission meetings until this lawsuit is resolved, because you made a choice to get into that lawsuit.
Right.
So you have made the choice for all of this that is happening right now.
So the law is the Parking Commission shall meet monthly. And you're taking a position that you will not meet monthly. Is that correct?
The city treasurer's office is a county office, and we are governed by state statute.
Okay. The Parking Commission is a municipal.
The Parking Commission is
division.
also a state statute.
It's not. It's,
Yes,
it's
it
with-
is.
The Parking Commission is with the.
82.485 and 8247 is the
Right.
Parking Commission.
Establish the park. That is correct. It established the parking. But parking is a municipal function. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Municipalities exist at the pleasure of the state,
Okay.
and the treasurer's office is a county office which is governed by the state.
Okay. But there is a legal opinion that you are required to have Parking Commission meetings, and that
I
the-
haven't seen such legal opinions,
Well, let me
Alderman Boyd.
ask you this, Treasurer Jones. Do you have a legal opinion that suggests that there's a conflict of interest by me performing my official duties as chairman of this committee that says it's a conflict of interest?
We have sent you several letters stating that it's a conflict of interest from our attorneys. stating that it's a conflict of interest for you to conduct these meetings under the subpoena, which I am here voluntarily, not under the subpoena, because we also sent you a letter stating that this latest subpoena is facially invalid.
Okay, so your attorney does not represent the city of St. Louis, is that correct?
But my attorney represents the treasurer's office.
Okay, so if your attorney finds that this ordinance is invalid for any reason, then there's a court remedy. Would you agree?
It depends.
It depends. Well, if someone willfully and knowingly violates the law and they disagree with it, normally in order to cure that, they would go to court. Would you agree?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, well, let me read you a statement from the city councilor's office, because I wanted to make sure that I clarify this conflict of interest. And this is from Julian Bush, the city councilor. I have reviewed the conflict of interest provisions contained in the city charter and state statutes that are applicable to public officials such as yourself. Article 8, Section 2 of the city charter contains a list of proscribed acts applicable to city officials such as yourself that they are in nature of conflict of interest provisions. None are applicable to your situation. I have also reviewed Section 105.452, 105.454, and 105.458 of Missouri Revised Statute that prohibit certain conflict of interest, and none of them prohibit you from asking the treasurer questions. However, it does occur to me that it's possible that the rules of the Board of Aldermen may contain rules relating to conflict of interest on the part of its members. I have not had a chance to review those rules given limited time that I've had to consider this matter. Okay, so this is a legal opinion.
We haven't seen that legal opinion.
That's okay, but
I'm not here to argue legal issues with you. I'm here to answer your questions related to the things that you put in Resolution 188.
and let me ask you this. The 40% transfer that was made, what authority is the 40% transfer made?
That happens with consultation from our auditors.
Okay, and who has to approve the 40% transfer?
That usually happens between myself and the CFO. After the auditors do the calculation, they present it to us and we approve it.
Okay, now you stand on state statute, is that correct? That's the governing body?
What's your question?
I want to make sure that state statute
Here
is
to
what you
argue
stand
legal
on.
issues with you.
I'm not going to argue. I want to make sure I'm clear with what you stand on, the state statute. Because what I want to point out to you is the state statute that talks about parking commission duties, city treasurer to serve as parking supervisor duties. Okay, so state statute 82.487, it says, 2, budget modifications for the parking fund, also known as the parking meter fund. That's what the commission supervises. And it also says on Part 2, the treasurer of any city not within the county shall be the parking supervisor, also known as the supervisor of parking meters, for any parking facility or space owned and wholly or part, leased or managed by the city parking division, and by the virtue of his office shall be subject to oversight and authorized funding in whole or in part by the parking commission. It also goes on to say in Section 6, make biannual installment payments to the annual general fund subject to the parking commission's approval and provide the comptroller and treasurer with monthly reports of all parking revenues. So basically what it says is the parking commission, let me read that again. So it's the parking commission make biannual installment payments to the annual general fund subject to the parking commission's approval. Now that is in state statute. So I'll ask you, the transfer of funds that was made after the audit, was that done with the approval of the parking commission?
I am the chair of the parking commission, so therefore it was approved.
But that was proved outside of the law. That's not what the state statute says.
Again, I'm not here to argue, and when we transferred the money, I didn't hear any argument from the comptroller's office about the transfer, because it has been 3 times as much as the previous treasurer has ever transferred.
It's a violation of the law.
That's your interpretation.
It's fact.
That's your interpretation.
It is absolute fact.
That's your interpretation.
No, it's not my interpretation. It's not just mine.
It has never been a question raised by external auditors in the past.
Because maybe they didn't know. So I'll ask the auditors, are they aware of that, and if that's, an exception or not.
They know,
Because,
and they've never raised this as an issue in the past.
But it's against the law to transfer without a meeting. That's clear.
That's
It's
your
state statute.
interpretation.
Okay, let's talk about something else. Because all this is probably going to be my interpretation, but the law is the law at the end of the day. Okay. Let's talk about, see, that was the 40%. Let me ask you this. How many law firms is the Parking Commission under contract with?
Is this a question related to the resolution?
It is, has to do with finances.
Approximately 3.
And who are they?
They are Posanelli, Denton's, and Armstrong Teasdale.
And tell me what we use them for.
Armstrong Teasdale is our bond counsel, Denton's is our lobbyist, and Posanelli for other matters.
Okay. Mr. Hines is here as your lawyer. How much is he being paid an hour?
I'm not aware of his hourly rate.
I mean, it's public information.
I'm not aware of his hourly rate.
Okay. Well, could you provide the committee with that, please?
We will research it and provide the committee with his hourly rate.
Thank you. And let's talk about, because policy and procedures is something I'm very interested in. And I know you want to disagree with me on what the state statute says, but let's talk about the $2 million that went to Metro.
Yes.
Now, I was looking at the minutes. Tell me how that process worked, because I didn't see any authorization for the expenditure of those funds. So walk me through how that came about and how it got approved by the Parking Commission and how it got approved to be spent.
Well, we were approached by the mayor to look at funding the update of the study for the MetroLink, expanding MetroLink, because that needed to be renewed in order to get back in the pipeline for federal funds. And we took a look at it and made the decision that we would include transportation-oriented development, which is an allowed expense of the Parking Commission, because it is parking and transportation related. So we then brought we had meetings with East West Gateway to talk about the process of the whole study and what that would look like. We brought that to the Parking Commission, and they approved it.
Okay, was there a meeting of the Parking Commission?
If there wasn't a meeting, it might have been approved by resolution, which we got all the signatures from the parking commissioners at the time.
So you walked the resolution around and had Parking Commissioners sign off on it, is that correct?
It's possible. I'm not aware. I don't remember the exact details.
Okay, in the minutes, it mentioned something. Okay. I believe, okay, in the minutes, I'm looking at agenda for August the 11th, 2016. These minutes will be August the 11th, 2016. It states in here, Mr. Boyd stated that the Parking Commission, and that's Jared Boyd, by the way. Mr. Boyd stated that the Parking Commission, through resolution on July the 11th, authorized the Treasurer's Office to enter into the contract. Right. So when a resolution is authorized, it suggests that there's a meeting.
No.
So okay, if we're going to expend public funds, it must be done in public, correct? So if the Parking Commission approved expenditure of funds, it should have been done in open space, correct? Otherwise, it's a violation of the Sunshine Law.
Interpretation. I'm not here to interpret law with you.
Okay, I know you're not here to interpret law, but I'm here to share with you, and I'm trying to be helpful because there are some things that have been done in the Parking Commission that is outside the law. And so I'm trying to bring to light some of the things that's been done.
Outside of your interpretation of the law.
Well, no, it's outside your interpretation of the law.
Yours too.
Well,
I'm not an attorney and neither are you.
But I've gotten legal opinions, Treasurer.
And so have I.
But the legal opinion of the city of St. Louis is what matters.
And the legal opinion of my attorneys is what matters to me.
But unless someone takes the city of St. Louis to court, it shall stand.
As you have.
It shall stand, though. It
As
stands
you have.
as the law. I have.
No,
but
it does not.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. It's a violation of the law, okay?
Under your interpretation.
That was done under the guise, it suggested there was a meeting, Treasurer, and there was no meeting taken. Okay, so let's move on. So the two...
We discussed the expenditure of funds in the meeting.
There was no meeting.
No, we
With
discussed
the date of
the
the resolution, the date the resolution was approved, there was no meeting. So let's go a step
So what do you
further.
want us to do? You want us to go back and tell all the people who are already participating in all these meetings to expand public transit that we should pull all that money back and that they shouldn't have that we shouldn't even entertain expanding public transit in the city?
Absolutely not. I support the expenditure of
Well, then
those
why are
funds.
you asking
But
these
it's a-
questions?
But it's a
Then-
process.
Then
What
why
I'm
are you asking
suggesting
these
is
questions?
you did not follow the process.
Did
and
follow the
law.
processes.
Well, let me ask you this. So when you spent and allocated $2 million, under what authority was it spent?
Under the chair, I'm the chair of the
Okay,
parking commission.
So public funds have to be authorized on ordinance.
No,
The budget.
no, this was not something that had to be authorized via ordinance.
All public funds must have a legislative act to back it up. You cannot just go out and willy-nilly spend public funds because it's sitting in
I
unrestricted
did not
accounts.
willy-nilly spend public funds.
I didn't suggest in this particular case, but you can't on and on again decide to just spend public funds without a legislative act, Treasurer.
The legislative act is the budget.
So where in the budget was the $2 million? And that's a good point, because the budget should have been modified, and the $2 million should have been added to the budget and therefore expended by ordinance.
The reason why it was expended that way, because if we had just added it to the budget, that would have decreased the amount that we spent, that we would transfer to the city's general fund. So it had to be expended as a non-operating expense. It's in our audit. Our auditors never had a problem with it, and neither did the mayor's office, and neither did the city attorney, because we asked the city attorney when we made this transfer if this was allowable, and the city attorney at the time did not have a problem.
They probably didn't have a problem with you spending the $2 million. However, it still required a legislative act.
But what is the point, Alderman Boyd?
The point is we have to spend money appropriately. That's the point.
So what are you going to do now that the money's already spent?
No,
Are
it's
we
what we do
crying
in the
over spilled
future.
milk now?
No, I'm not. It's about what we do in the future. It's not spilled milk to me. It's about a process. Okay. So let's talk about additional expenditures of public funds. So Donald Gage was an employee of yours.
I don't discuss personnel matters.
I understand that, but when it goes to the court, then it becomes public.
I'm not going to discuss this. It's a personnel matter.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you but one question, but I'll talk about this a little bit. So Donald Gage was an employee of yours who allegedly was fired because he ran for committee man in a race that you ran for committee woman. He filed in federal court for discrimination against the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment. Is that case settled?
I'm not going to discuss this.
This is a public, under the Sunshine Law, I'm asking you yes or no, was
You
the
already
case
know
settled?
the answer to that
Was
question.
it settled?
You already know the answer to that question,
Was it
Alderman Boyd.
settled?
Was it? Do you know?
If it's settled, can we get it? Matter of fact, I do know it was settled. I want
Thank
you to
you.
admit that it was settled. So, we would like, please submit to the committee a copy of the settlement. Okay?
We'll
Now-
look into that.
Well, let me quote you, Missouri Statute 610, under the Sunshine Law,
There are some
2:10:1.
confidentiality provisions in Sunshine, and this is a personnel matter.
Well, unless the judge sealed it, it's open to the public. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about conflict of interest, because you filed a protective order against me that went before the courts on Monday about harassment and about a conflict of interest. Did the judge hear the case?
This is not about Resolution 188, Alderman Boyd.
This is about expenditure of public funds. You are-
Alderman Boyd, this is not about Resolution 188.
It's about expenditure of public
It is
funds.
not about the expenditure of public funds.
If your lawyer goes to court on your behalf, does it cost the city money?
It costs the treasurer's office money, and it comes from the parking fund, which is funded by parking receipts from parking tickets, parking fees, and parking in public garages.
Which is public funds. Right? Would you agree those are public funds and they're not the treasurer's funds?
They're in a separate account. It's an enterprise fund.
But they're public funds, right?
That's your interpretation.
Okay. So, going back, because you spent money on this order of protection. So, was it heard? Because it talked about, I want to give credence to
If we
conflict of
didn't have
interest.
this lawsuit and we weren't in this particular situation right now, I wouldn't have had to seek that remedy.
But you spoke about.
This is harassment, Alderman Boyd. This is harassment, and I'm tired of coming in front of your kangaroo court every week because we have work to do in my office. We run a $15 million enterprise, and we have work to do.
Please.
Now, you made the choice to enter a lawsuit, and so you have to follow the proceedings until that lawsuit is finished. If you didn't enter the lawsuit, we could be having parking commission meetings every month.
Treasurer,
We could be.
you are.
I had
acting-
tried to work with you, and you
Not
have
true.
you've done nothing but come back at me with ire and angst and vicious attacks. So I'm sure that that your committee has other things to do as well than come to these weekly meetings. How about all the money that you're spending going through this? How much money is the city spending to constantly go through this?
Treasurer, the aldermen get paid $37,000 a year no matter what. So it's not costing the taxpayer any additional monies no matter how many meetings we're at.
Yes, it is. Every hour that we spend on this, we could be doing something else for our
Treasurer,
communities.
Let me ask you this. So you saying that you come to committees week after week. Let me poll the committee real quick and ask the committee of how many times do they remember the treasurer appearing before this committee. Alderman Murphy, how many times has the treasurer appeared before this committee since June of last year?
I couldn't say for sure, 2 or 3 perhaps.
Okay, Alderwoman Boyd,
I didn't take attendance.
Alderman Coatar.
I would concur with Alderwoman Murphy, I think 2 or 3 times.
Okay, Alderman Bosley.
I think it's exactly 3 or 4.
Okay, Alderman Middlebrook.
It's 4.
I'm new and it's been once for me.
Okay, so Treasurer, you have not appeared weekly at this committee hearing. Matter of fact,
Tried to do this weekly. Since
Madam
January of 2018, you've issued your subpoena, you had to take it back, you issued it again. It's still facially invalid because the clerk has not attested to the subpoena, and the interim clerk is not a position according to the rules of the Board of Aldermen. So, look, I want to be able to do my job for the citizens of St. Louis, just like I want all of you to be able to do so as well. This procedure, all of these procedures do nothing for us moving together and moving forward and doing work for the people who elected us.
Treasurer, you made a statement that you're coming to this committee weekly. So how many times have you been to this committee this month?
If you had your... If you've had your way, I'd have been here every week since January 16.
The point is, you're not here every week. I want to make that point.
Point is, this is unnecessary.
It says in your opinion, you know, we're all elected to do a job, and you're failing to do your jobs in certain aspects. Not having parking commission meetings.
Really?
You're not doing your job if you're not having parking
Talk
commission
about
meetings.
who's failing to do their job. Have you looked at the 22nd Ward lately?
I live in the 22nd Ward, but
Exactly, and I live right next door to it.
we're talking about the operations of the parking
I'm
commission.
talking about your
not talking
ward.
about the 22nd Ward.
And I am.
And if you want to be in cited for contempt behavior, we can go there. I'm trying to keep this very professional with you, Treasurer, and I'm trying to do things according to the rules. I'm asking you basic questions. That's all I'm asking
So
you.
you're
I'm bringing
asking questions
clarity.
outside of the resolution, and which was so broadly worded that you can sit here and ask me anything that I've done in the last 5 years, and that can fall under financial procedures under this resolution.
Is
If you
that-
want to ask me questions about what we're currently doing, I'll answer those. But if you want to ask questions related to the lawsuit, I've told you I don't know how many times, it's a conflict of interest. But
That's
we
not
are
true.
appearing voluntarily in front of this committee, regardless of your subpoenas.
Treasurer, just because you say something is a conflict, it does not make it true. I'm sitting here
Well,
looking.
my attorney said, just like your attorney said it wasn't a conflict of
Okay.
interest, my attorney said it's a conflict of interest.
Treasurer Jones, at the end of the day, it's the city's attorney that matters. And if you don't like the ordinances, then you challenge it in court. Now, you've challenged the one lawsuit, but you have not challenged Board Bill number 39, 92, or 193 in court.
As I think
Therefore,
it is a waste
stands.
of city
That's your
taxpayers'
opinion.
money to go to court
Okay.
to challenge local ordinances.
There was a motion filed in reference to this conflict of interest. The judge didn't even hear it. The judge didn't even hear the conflict of interest that you're claiming. If the judge would not hear it, then obviously it's not a conflict of interest. You tried to go through the judicial process, the right procedures, and the judge would not hear it. Therefore, it's not of conflict of interest. The legal opinion of the city council says it's not a conflict of interest, and just because you
I
say it
didn't
does
go
not
before
make
the
it
judge
true.
for a conflict of interest. I went before the judge because I said, you are harassing me. You are attempting to embarrass me in front of my constituents.
Would you like
and in
me to
front of
read it?
everyone.
Would you
No.
like me to read the whole motion? Because the motion clearly talks about conflict of interest, and it also talks about harassment, Treasurer.
Yes, and it talks about you and all in this
It sure
Chamber
does.
report.
I'm talking about facts. I'm not making up stuff. You know, just because you say it doesn't make it true.
Oh,
These are facts. And with that, I'm going to ask if there are any members of the committee that have any follow-up questions to the discussion that we've had. So, Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions.
Alderman Coatar.
I don't have any questions on this topic. Well, we have the treasurer here. We had a board bill earlier from Alderman Roddy about residential permit parking. This is something I know I've talked to your chief of staff about and your deputy chief of staff about. Have we made any progress on figuring out how the treasurer's office can run this residential permit parking? Because I think it's something that many neighborhoods would like that maybe don't have the resources of a Park Central Development Agency. Any progress on that front?
Well, we have been in conversations with our app developer. There is an addition to the app that we can purchase that does residential permit parking. However, we would like to have this lawsuit resolved so we can continue the business of the parking commission before we can go forward with that. This whole lawsuit has tied our hands from moving forward on any of the things that we've wanted to do this year. And in future years. So, you know, we would like to have this resolved before we move forward on any other of our other projects.
Okay. If this lawsuit's resolved and the treasurer you retain your authority as supervisor of the parking commission and all your parking functions, will you commit to working with me on getting that functionality of the app purchased?
Absolutely.
Because it's something that I know my
Absolutely.
constituents would like and many
Yes.
others. Okay. Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd. Oh, she's not here. Alderman Bosley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I more so have just a question regarding what it would take for us to get to I guess pretty much a point where we can all work together and have more of a working relationship collectively.
Yes.
Is all that you're asking for in particular to continue business the way that we kind of would all like to see collectively, and not that's on both ends, is the lawsuit drop?
No. Actually, we are still in the thick of things. We had a motion argued last week for a motion for summary judgment, and we're waiting to hear back from the judge on that. But that's just one motion it's going to be a long process.
Understood. I guess with it being such a lengthy process, and we all will be affected in some way, because I mean we got a lot of business to attend to.
Yes, we do.
I'm just asking from, because we do have your, what it is exactly that you particularly need to move forward, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, everybody has something they want, and I mean, it could be as easy as you just saying you would like the lawsuit to be dropped. I just want to put on record what it is we can collectively do on both ends to figure out an amicable solution.
You know what I would love is that if there was some way that we could come to a settlement, that all sides could agree on some sort of settlement going forward and what that looks like as far as the the parking commission and the roles of the treasurer involved in the parking commission. If that's, giving more money to the city's general fund, if that's, ceding some power one way or another, I'm open to that. I've always been open to that and have had talks with the city attorney on that. However, these events don't help us get to that end. My mother always used to say, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? Well, this is all vinegar. And the citizens of the city elected us to represent them and to do a job, not to sit here and argue about pennies when people are dying in porta potties and in dumpsters.
So-
when our children need summer jobs, when people are unbanked, which is the work that we're trying to do, and trying to get people to buy homes in the city. So there's a whole host of things that we could be doing other than sitting here arguing about pennies.
I think to some degree we all have a particular fight that we all fighting within our job, the scope of our job. We all have things that we have to do on a daily basis and positions that we hold that we think that we might be doing the right thing, and everybody has an opinion, So
Right.
With that being said, of course, we are elected to do our job. We are elected to serve the people. Would you be willing, for the sake of everyone else, and I'm just asking you this question, to have a conversation outside of it being public, outside of having people around, us just talking like elected officials and seeing what we can do outside of the courts to possibly come to a solution? Would you be willing to have a sit down?
I'd be willing to have that conversation with you, but since Alderman Boyd is entered in a lawsuit, I can't have a conversation with him without my attorney present.
Would you be willing to have that conversation with the city councilor, Alderman Boyd, and your attorney, but just in a room with us?
If
Possibly.
that is permissible according to sunshine law, I'd be willing to do that. I don't know if that's permissible, could be, because of.
Understood. We have to just, of course, I want all parties to be protected, but once again, just sometimes we just need to have a conversation that could possibly do it. I don't know. I like solutions. I think we can all live in a
No, I'm all
kumbaya.
about solutions too, Alderman.
So if we could possibly just have a discussion or
Right.
figure out a way to set that up, I just wanted to ask, would you be willing to do so?
Yes, thank you, Alderman Bosley.
No problem. Thank you.
Sorry, I've been saying the same person a long time.
I do got one more question. I'm sorry. And this is pertaining to the actual resolution. Section 1.
I don't have the resolution
you
in
don't
front
have
of
it?
me.
Okay, we're just, it talks
Oh,
about.
here we go.
Okay. The acquisition, Section 1, what is it? Yeah, number 1, Section 3. It says the acquisition, development, regulation, and operation of such parking facilities or spaces owned in whole or in part, leased or managed by the parking division. You all own facilities that aren't directly related to parking, correct?
A few, yes.
A few of them. One of them is in my ward. Of course, we've talked about it
Yes,
before.
we have.
At some point in time, I know right now you all store, I don't know what you all
Equipment.
store in that building?
Old equipment and stuff.
Old equipment and things. It is needing some attention.
Yes.
And it sits right directly behind the park. That is a discussion I would like to have.
We had a meeting set up, and I think your person called to cancel it. We're open anytime you want to continue those conversations.
Okay, yeah, that would be, well, I know the building itself, what I wanted to ask is if we had a group of individuals or a developer perhaps that would like to do something with that building, what would be the way that we could go about getting it, because the parking commission isn't meeting right now?
Right.
How can we go about?
I'm not totally sure, and I don't want to commit to anything without my chief of staff present. He is on bereavement leave at the moment.
Okay.
So, but yes, let's have the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
Okay. I want to make a statement about these lawsuits, Madam Treasurer. You know, the city of St. Louis has been sued many a times. Most frequently, most recently, I should say, a couple of police officers who were majors felt they were passed over for Lieutenant Colonel sued the city of St. Louis, and they came to work every day. We had a fire chief that, deputy fire chief that was passed over promotion. He sued the city, and he came to work every day. The city is sued often, and we cannot shut down government operations because the city is sued or there's a lawsuit pending. That would not be responsible to our citizens. As far as the parking commission, for those who don't know, again, as the treasurer said, it's governed under state statute. There are 5 members of the parking commission. The treasurer is a member of the parking commission and acts as the parking supervisor. The treasurer gets to pick the director of operations that basically manages the parking division, who's also a commissioner. The comptroller is a commissioner. The director of streets is a commissioner. The chairman of streets is a commissioner. It's a 5-body commission. The state statute in its current form, which again, I'm part of a lawsuit against, it sets and states that that 5-member body has the authority and the oversight of parking. Now, Madam Treasurer, you suggesting it's a fact that I'm part of the lawsuit, the mayor's office is part of the lawsuit, so there's 2 commissioners out of 5 that are part of the lawsuit, where there are 3 commissioners that are not part of the lawsuit. So if you want to do the will of the people, 3 trumps 2. And so you can still have parking commission meetings and do the people's business. So I just think
Are
that...
you saying if I have a parking commission meeting, you won't come?
That's not what I'm saying. Because...
What I thought I heard.
Because I don't have a conflict of interest. And that has... And matter of fact... let's see here.
I think the difference here is that, you pointed out, yes, the parking commission consists of those 5 members, but 2 of the 5 members are stating that the lawsuit seeks to invalidate the parking commission. So you're on the parking commission and you seek to invalidate the commission that you're sitting on. So you can't have it both ways.
But I just passed you a legal opinion, and please pass it to your attorney. And if your attorney wants to respond to it, we'll be happy to look at his rebuttal. But until a judge rules and closes, we still have to do the will of the people. And you are only one person of the parking commission, and you don't get unilateral authority to just decide that you're going to cease and desist doing business and the will of the people in the parking division just because there's a lawsuit.
Oh, wait a minute. The business of the parking division is still going on as we speak. So let's see. Parking tickets are still being issued. People are still feeding meters. We're still collecting the money from those meters. We're still operating the lots that we own and manage, City Hall being one of them. People are still parking and going back and forth and doing their business. So the business of the parking division is still going on despite these parking commission meetings, which aren't really necessary.
The parking commission sets policy, is that correct?
Yeah, the policy has already been set. Is there any policy that needs to be changed?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, that's your opinion, again.
But every parking commission meeting, a parking commission member is entitled to an opinion, correct?
Yes.
And so when we come together as a body, we make decisions as a body. We don't make decisions unilaterally.
I'm not making any decisions unilaterally. And the parking division was going on doing the same business before I became treasurer. So the only thing that I did was upgrade the meters so they could do it more efficiently.
And you did a great job at doing that, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Whoa. Thank you.
However, there are other business that some of us on the parking commission would like to see happen, and we can't talk to you about it unless
What business is that, since you were constantly bringing me before the streets committee? What business is that?
Well,
we still have yet to talk about the 14th and Clark lot.
We'll get to it.
Do we want to talk about that?
Yes, thank you. Matter of fact, why don't we go ahead and talk about that?
Yes, let's talk business, finally.
Go ahead, make the presentation.
Um,
You have some copies to hand out?
Michelle, are you here?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, for the record, if we're going to have a discussion about the 14th and Clark lot, I'm going to recuse myself and step off the dais just
Okay.
because my firm has an interest in this property, so I don't want to be a part of the
Yes,
discussion.
thank you, Alderman Coatar. See how he does that? Because there is a claim there and there's a conflict. Therefore, he is exercising. You want to just talk about that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Again, tell us who you are. Ms.
My
Smart.
name is Michelle Smart, and I'm the Chief Fiscal Officer for the Parking Division under the Treasurer's Office.
You have handouts?
No, I did not make handouts. I'm sorry. I was not aware I needed to do that. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have on the City Hall lot.
Okay, how much money is it generating? The treasurer seems to have had something. Was that a report, treasurer?
Yes, it's an internal report that we developed to answer your questions.
Okay, it's hard to ask questions if we don't have data in front of us.
We have an extra copy here. You know
Yeah,
what?
we
Here,
can make
Alderman Boyd, you can have my copy.
And for the sake of time, I'll just set this aside. Thank you, Ms. Smart. Because I'm not going to waste everybody's time reading through this and coming up with some questions. So, thank you, Ms. Smart.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and get ready to conclude this. And Madam Treasurer, here's what I need you to provide back to the committee. I need copies of all the legal contracts. And
We will provide copies that aren't in violation of attorney-client privilege.
Right. I'm not asking for any work product. I'm asking for anything that's open under the
Provide
Sunshine
copies
Law.
that are not in violation of attorney-client privilege.
And a copy of all the legal expenditures per agency year to date.
You can get that from Ames.
I would like a report from your office. Thank you. And with that, Madam Treasurer, I want to thank you for your participation today. We may have further conversation in the future.
Let the record show that we voluntarily came and the subpoena is facially invalid. Thank you very much.
And the subpoena is not invalid. For the record, the subpoena is not invalid. And that is a matter of opinion, of course, from the treasurer. The next board bill we will hear. Yes. And Madam Treasurer, you are still under the subpoena. So you will still operate as if you're under the subpoena. Let's see, the next board bill is Board Bill 256. Alderman Coatar here? Did Alderman Coatar step out?
Last thing we got on the agenda. So just for I'm 100% course, everybody has their opinion on things. I think to a degree, the conversation needed to be had. Of course, things could have played out a lot. This. Start with the mic. Let's get the play out a little nicer.
Anyway.
The Parker Commission does need to.
We got on the bill?
What the intent is. To the Parker Commission to be pretty much anything done in Parker.
Are we still live? Are we still on the record?
I think so.
All right. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized on Board Bill 256.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board Bill 256 is basically a simple board bill that states that if the court rules in the plaintiff's favor and that the parking goes under the city of St. Louis, that it will all be governed under our current parking code. And it's only effective if the court rules in the city's favor.
All right. And I guess if I could ask a question.
Yes.
Where are we, what's the status of the, of this lawsuit between, I guess, taxpayers and you and the parking, or the treasurer's office? Where is it in the process?
Sure. There was a hearing last Thursday on February the 1st. There's been a whole bunch of motions filed. It's before Judge Michael Stelzer, and you know the legal system better than I do. I mean, he could rule in 2 or 3 weeks. He could rule in 2 or 3 months or so. So we just don't know. But unfortunately, there's some good business that we could be doing in the parking division as far as the parking commission setting policy, and we're pretty much at as a standstill until, based on what the treasurer is saying, until that point happens. Although there is another remedy, but that's something that I'll talk about at another time.
Okay. All right. We'll take questions from members of the committee. Alderwoman Murphy.
I'm sorry, Alderman Boyd, could you explain this a little bit further, the board bill? You said if the lawsuit is settled in the city's favor, you're saying, what exactly would happen? And are we going to, would this impact the state laws and whatever that we keep bouncing back and forth between
Sure.
the city and state?
Sure. So right now, the challenge is challenging the current state statute that created the parking commission that is unconstitutional. If the judge rules that it is unconstitutional, then we have to continue to do business, and we can't just have this void there. And what this does, it puts in place that the city of St. Louis will govern itself based on the current parking code without any language suggested by the current state statute. So all the current state statute stuff would go away, and basically what we'd end up doing, the city would have the option of creating its own parking commission, which could have, citizens involved on a parking commission, or it could not have a parking commission. At the end of the day, all the revenue, 100% of the revenue will go back to the taxpayer.
Thank you.
All right. Alderman Bosley.
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
No questions.
All right.
So I do got one
Yes,
question.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Just for the record.
Use your mic, please.
I'm sorry. Just for the record, you did, well, you already kind of stated it, but I just wanted to, do you have a number of times that you have requested for parking commission meetings?
I could give you pages and pages of emails in which I've asked to have a parking commission meeting, in which I've asked, like I said earlier, over 5 times for some records. Trying to get information as an elected official and as a parking commission member is an arduous task. I mean, it's just very difficult. The treasurer's office, the treasurer, the parking staff, there's a resistance, and that's at the order of the treasurer, I'm sure. I feel offended that I have to do a sunshine request to get information, and I'm an elected official, chairman of this committee, in which the budget for the parking commission comes to this committee. I'm offended that I have to do sunshine requests as any normal citizen would have to do. That's very offensive to me. And we should all be able, as you said earlier, we should all be able to sit down and just work things out in the best interest of our constituents, period. We're all entitled to our own opinions, as we are as committee members. You know, we like each other, some don't like each other. We'll be with you on this bill, we won't be with you on the next bill. But that doesn't mean we have to stop doing the people's business because we have a disagreement. And when there's a conflict of interest, it should be fully disclosed. I agree with that. But when the city councilor issues an opinion, a fact, and goes through the state statute and the local ordinances and finds that my position is not a conflict of interest, we can't listen to an outside attorney. That's irresponsible, because if we get sued as aldermen, do you know who represents us? The city councilor. The city councilor is even obligated to represent the treasurer in her capacity as treasurer. She doesn't have to go and take parking commission money to represent herself as the treasurer. Even though there's a lawsuit right now, the city council's office is obligated to represent the treasurer on matters that have nothing to do with the lawsuit. I operate based on facts. It's not this hyperbole. You know, I'm not just going to do sound bites and put stuff out. Everything I talk about is facts. It's not about fiction. I'm not trying to be a social media icon. I'm not trying to be a big hero. I'm a public servant. I've served 23 years in the military. I've served now 15 years at the Board of Aldermen. Service is part of my core value system. And I believe in sitting down and working things out with people, but you have to have at least 2 willing participants. You can't just sit down by yourself and work something out with somebody else.
Understood. So just for the record, you would also, like Ms. Jones said, be willing to sit down collectively and see if we can possibly have some conversation to move past, I would say, this hump in the road.
Absolutely, Alderman Bosley. However, you heard clearly the treasurer said she will not sit down with me until this lawsuit is over with,
Yes,
because
sir.
she perceives that I have a conflict of interest.
Well, yes, sir. She said she would not sit down unless she had, I guess the gentleman was her lawyer with her. So once again, if we can all figure out a way we can sit down,
If she's willing, I'm willing. I've always been willing to sit down and work things out in the best interest of the city of St. Louis.
Sir, I have no further questions. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Hearing, we got non-committee members here. Any questions? Carol, no. All right, hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion to pass Board Bill 256 with the due pass recommendation.
So move.
Second. Madam
Previous
Clerk?
roll.
We lost some people. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Coatar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
All right.
So just so you understand.
Okay, I want to bring up to the committee that next Tuesday, we're going to have the refuse commissioner, probably the street commissioner, Paul Payne, the budget director, Todd Walchman, director of operations, and they're going to talk to us about where's the money? Where's the money going? We're paying an extra $3 for trash pickup, but my constituents do not feel that they're getting quality refuse services. So it's just kind of an update. I'm looking forward to it. I sent an email out to every member of the Board of Aldermen. I know everybody can't make it. Hopefully, all the committee members can make it, but I'm looking to get input from all colleagues because everybody's voice matters. And I want to make sure we're being as efficient as we can with the limited resources. So I just want to, again, make you guys aware of that. That will be next Tuesday. We will probably have it here in room 208. So respond to the email ahead of time. So if I need to get certain information, there's something that you want to see in the presentation, some type of data that you're looking for, so we can give them heads up on that and they can come well prepared to talk to us about trash services.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's at 9 a.m.
That'll be 9 a.m. on the 13th. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none,